Hi, I'm Samantha Mackay from Individuo, and this is Katy Beckham. And today we're talking about creativity in the Enneagram. Katy is a sexual five, and I've been dying to have a chat with a sexual five about what creativity means for them because it's really tied in as part of that personality description. So I'm very excited. Thank you so much for reaching out and being here today.
Thanks for having me. I definitely want to, hopefully, I represent my subtype well.
No pressure. No pressure. So let's start. Like, what does creativity mean to you?
So let me just say, creativity is not something that has been on the forefront of my life for a long time. I'm a five wing six, so I'm practicality and getting things done. I'm a married mother of three, and also work full time. So time is, even more of a thing for me. I know it's a thing for fives, but it's definitely a thing for me as well. And so creativity is not something I'm really allowed in until probably the last 4 years or so. And so for me, creativity looks like that my two outlets that I have are writing and podcasting. And I really enjoy those. And I guess it really came about for me. I started doing like a morning routine, like where I take walks outside, and I love being in nature. I'm a wildlife biologist and I love being in nature. And so just that walk in the morning really started spurring something inside of me where I felt like I wanted to go right when I came back. It was just fodder for all of this download from my brain. And I started journaling after would walk. And that just kind of led to, I don't know, just like me being creative. And the more I journaled and the more I did things, the more I wanted to do it. And it was like a yearning there that I really wanted to keep meeting. And then the podcasting piece actually it came about in kind of an unexpected way. And, um, and I'm very spiritual. I'm a Christian. And, just in the mornings when I would be walking, I definitely had an impression that felt like it was sort of outside of me saying, do a podcast and speak to people, let people, feel like they're not alone, and just support people in that way. And it was really weird because it's not something I've ever really thought about. And having a podcast is definitely not something I've thought about.
Mm.
When I was younger, I wanted to be a journalist when I was really young. And because I really am just so curious and just an endless curiosity. And I like having deep conversations. As a sexual, I love a one-on-one conversation. There's nothing that fills my soul more, um, both draining but also fulfilling. And so those are the two ways that creativity kind of comes through for me. And yeah, so
Mm.
those are the I can talk about um the ways that I go about that if you want, or I don't know
Well,
which way that you want to.
I'm curious, I think, because the sexual five description sort of suggests that, there's a more emotionality to this version of the five, and that can be expressed often through some sort of artistic, a medium or expression in some way, which is why they can be mistaken for fours. And so I'm curious as to how that piece has resonated or come for you, because I know not all sexual fives are actually artistic. So I'm just curious about how that has been for you.
Like I said, I write almost every day, but I almost never share that. And it is deeply personal. And when I share it, I really feel like I have carved out a piece of my soul and put it on a platter for everyone. It is so hard to do that. It's one of the hardest things. And as far as sharing, like with the writing and the podcasting, I've definitely shared more podcasting. And that probably is a form of a bypass for me because you're talking to someone else and you're asking them questions. But occasionally I will be on there as well. And there's a couple of pieces that I have, a couple of episodes. One was about shame, just about something I had worked through with a coach. And I was like, I feel really led to share this. And it was like a deeply personal, very emotional thing. Actually, when I
Mm.
would listen to it, I would cry. And I held it together for the episode, but I mean, there's so much, I feel like just to speak into the emotionality, there's so much emotions inside that I feel like if I let it out, I will never be able to pick the pieces back up.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many emotions. And I'm a midlife, I'm 44. And so that is definitely becoming more apparent to me. That emotionality part and like the wing of the four is definitely coming out for me more as I get older. Like it's very easy for me to access those emotions now versus what it was.
Mm.
And but it's more of a controlled access because unless I'm alone and have plenty of time to cry and kind of get all that out, I have to keep it, I try to keep it, you know, to
Mm.
myself for the most part. But
Mm.
the emotionality is definitely there.
Right. Yeah, so it's still that intensely private holding
Yeah.
in, but what is
Hmm.
emerging, even though it's just for you, is something very deeply emotional and maybe a little less sort of like academic or logical or rational or whatever the appropriate five word is there, um, in what's sort of emerging, even if you're not sharing it with others, it's sort of what's coming out.
It it really is. And I definitely think it's definitely a, part of just aging and things like that. But I definitely feel definitely a pull towards connecting with people more as I get older and really letting people know how much I care about them versus like I know how much I care about them, but sometimes it doesn't really translate.
Mm-hmm.
But I care about them so much. Like it would like literally break me if something happened to that person, but I don't know that I'm necessarily getting that point across to
Right.
them. And so it feels really weird, actually to be emotional after having lived so long and not really showing that. But it's where I am.
Mm.
So um
And how did learning that you're a sexual five change this connection to like or understanding of this emotional part of you? So you've talked about it, it's sort of becoming and expanding as you've gotten older, but I'm wondering how it was there when you were before you knew that, when you were younger, and how that may have influenced your creative expression in some way.
I definitely wrote a lot whenever I was younger. I just like stopped after I, started having kids and getting really, really busy. I just didn't have time for that. But whenever I was younger, I knew just so imaginative in my head and just it was definitely an outlet. Sometimes, there was some, trauma, earlier in my life, and I think it was definitely an escape. I definitely see where that kind of played in as an escape. But I don't know, whenever I was younger, I definitely kept everything to myself. And when I realized I was a five, like I definitely like I felt it so deep in my soul. I felt like I was really coming across with that to people. And my husband was definitely a good sounding board for me. He's a one and he's like, I said, am I coming across like that to people? He said, yeah, you are. Like people, you're very guarded, you're very reserved. And
Mm.
it's hard to read you. It's hard to know what you're thinking inside. And I've had so many people say, you're very hard to read. I don't know what's going on, like close friends. Um, so I guess knowing my type and realizing like, okay, that makes sense why they're saying that to me. Like I really feel it. And I feel it so much. I feel like I'm actually doing it. Like I
Mm.
feel like I can think, you're just top heavy with the thinking. You feel like it's so intense with the thinking. You're actually doing the thing. You're actually not doing that thing.
Yeah. And for you, a lot of that thinking, is it the intensity of your thinking or is it also intensely emotional? Because a lot of people don't realize that fives are very sensitive to connection and how close or far away, that connection
Yes.
is with people. And so I'm curious for you, like with this intense emotionality that other people aren't seeing because it's not coming out or hasn't been until recently. Um, I lost the thread of my question in all of my tangents in the question. Um,
Do that all the time.
yeah, so I'm curious. We know fives like to think a lot, but also the sexual 5 has this emotionality piece. I suppose what I'm asking is, does it feel like it's the emotionality, does it feel like an intensity of thinking, or does it actually feel like it's coming from the heart? So does it feel sort of more emotional as well as the intensity of the thinking?
I think at times the emotions can overwhelm the thinking part. And then
Interesting. Okay.
it feels like I'm going to explode sometimes with my heart, like how intense it feels to me. Like I am so sensitive to anything on TV. I mean, I definitely watch documentaries and things like that where I feel like I can keep my emotions in check a little bit more. But if I watch something where someone's being hurt or someone's being, um, I don't know, that it's something that evokes an emotional response. Um, like recently I went to see, like I read the book, Where the Crawdads Sing. And, when it first came out, and then I went to see the movie, I could not get myself together in that movie. Like I am in a public place and I am crying so hard. I was like, it's almost audible. And I was like, I've got to get out of here. I've got to go to the bathroom. And this is embarrassing. I'm going to die in here, but I cannot. It was so emotional. I could almost not make it through. And I watched that movie 3 times, and every single time it did the same thing.
Mm,
So the emotions can be overwhelming at times. And I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to feel them and like let them pass because I'm so used to bottling them up. And then they just like come out and I'm just like grabbing at the pieces and it can be almost too much.
right.
But I
And
don't really share that with anybody.
has creativity helped with that processing, or helped like wrangle them a bit more?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely has. I mean, the writing piece and being able to have conversations like this on my podcast with people, like they'll share and then I'll share. And it's in snippets more if I'm, sharing like that. But in writing, especially if I know I'm not going to show it to anyone, it definitely helps the download and to
Mm,
be, creativity to me is just sharing the depths of my soul. It's not really creating like I don't read fiction really. I read nonfiction and I don't feel the need to create like a false atmosphere for myself. So I don't really read that stuff and I don't really write that way. Like I
mm,
enjoy literary nonfiction. And so I write literary nonfiction when
right.
I write.
Okay.
So I really enjoy just all the details to make it really vivid in the way that it's portrayed, but it's all 100% real. And so the creativity to me is just the revelation of my soul
Mm,
in a different atmosphere, like in writing or podcasting that's different than like what you would have in maybe a conversation, like a normal conversation.
I really like that phrase, creativity is the revelation of my soul. Um,
That's what it feels like to me.
mm,
I'm just, and it really helps, I think, people in my, people that listen to my podcast and know me in real life, when they see me, it kind of gives them, I see people have changed in the way that they, the way I observe them to be um, towards me, that they sort of like see me in a different way. Or maybe that's just my perception, but it seems like they see me in a different way and they connect with me. I've started to connect with people a little bit better because it gives them a little bit more of a frame of reference of who I am on the inside that they may not get to see. We may not ever get to that point.
mm. In person, you
Gives
mean?
them sort of right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so just exploring the creative process a bit for you, have you experienced creative blocks, whether it be podcasting or in a creative project of like a writing project of some kind?
100%.
Mm.
And those are related to energy and alone time. And
Okay.
that's so I mean, there's times when, and then also whatever's going on in my life, if I'm overwhelmed by, like work or family, or, it's like a sad time or something like that, I'll just get to, I'm operating on just needs and not wants. And so, sometimes, I mean, I know that it's not good to, but sometimes I will definitely not do the self-care and not take time in the mornings and do the walks or whatever. I just, do what I have to do and that's it. Just operating on like autopilot, doing what I need to, conserving my energy, sleeping a lot if I need to, and just not doing any of that stuff. And that not being able to walk and start my morning with that fresh air in my face and walking outside in nature. Nature is my number one way to get back into the game creativity wise. And also alone time. And those are synonymous because that's after I've already taken the kids to school. And that is just my time that I'm not an employee. I'm not a wife. I'm not anything to anybody. I am me. And I can be out there and do my thing. And sometimes the creative juices flow so well for me that I'm like on my phone doing voice memos because I can't get it out quick enough.
Yeah.
Or doing like talk to text on the Google Docs. You know what I'm saying, probably.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're similar in that ways, um, but yeah, I mean, I get a creative block whenever I am overwhelmed and everything is taking my time and I am just energy wise, I'm spent. I cannot be creative in that environment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting. You were reminding me, for me, I have to walk at like not dawn, but in that sort of sunrisey time of day.
Yes.
And once, if I'm in that, then yeah, you walk for a bit and then all of a sudden you're like, how am I writing? Oh my, there's so much to write down.
Yep. Yep.
But for me, it does seem to need to be that morning, that early morning time. But yeah, walking.
I think it's,
essentially.
with the thinking type, especially, I think having the body moving before your brain starts working too hard and getting in those over, whatever your brain's fixated on, like being able to, it's almost like it's the wheel that drives your brain in the morning on like a fresh start. Like before your brain gets on something, you start. I mean, it's like you give yourself that brain space and that time. And that is definitely where creativity resides for me, most definitely.
Yeah.
Or if I take a nice hike somewhere and it's beautiful and I see the Spanish moss like hanging over the beautiful water and the reflection of that and like an egret like slipping out into the water, I'm just like, like I'll take a picture of that. So I want to take a beautiful picture. I want to come back and write about that. It's just one thing after another. And some of that stuff never really amounts to anything directly that I would use it for. Does that make sense? Like it's just I'm writing and it's just I'm putting it out there. But sometimes that is my inspiration for what's we're going to talk about this season or what I'm going to write about. And I've started doing a memoir and I've started doing different things. And but that is definitely nature and being outside and walking, exercising are the two biggest hacks for getting the creativity for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. They definitely work for me too. Absolutely. So I'm curious, you've mentioned a few projects. Which creation are you most proud of?
I'm definitely I haven't shared most of my writing, but when I do share it, I feel so proud of myself. Like for one, for even sharing it, and two, because I know it is a product of the soul. I know it's not anything to get any sort of reaction from anyone, but I'm always proud of myself when I share the writing. But the podcast, I am so proud of that because it was definitely born out of a sort of a spiritual inspiration, and just the name of it. I don't know, the logo, just the whole thing. I've had a hand in the whole process, and I've really just enjoyed it so very much. Like the way it starts, like have an idea and just it'll come from my head, but then I have to have buy-in from my heart that is what I want to put out into the world. And so it's not monetized at all. This is just purely for it's just like an experiment for me to be able to put myself out there. And I love it. And so being able to have that theme that I want to go towards, and then the guest and the whole development of it feels very organic, like a flow. And the information that it provides, it feels rich, it feels fully researched, and just, I feel really good about it after I put it out. And then the editing part, I know you said you didn't like that, but it's part of it. And I
It
don't
is.
really put out, as many episodes as maybe other people, but I don't, care about that. Like, I put out what I put out. And so I edit that, and I have time to really put time into editing. And then the little marketing pieces that I make afterwards. Like, I really enjoy just the whole,
Mm,
it feels full circle for me.
mm,
It
yeah.
really does. All the different pieces. It feels like I take a piece of my soul. I use my technical abilities, which are, very natural. I use my writing abilities, which feels very natural. Then I'll use visual pieces, taking photographs, I feel like that feels really natural. All of those are different types of creativity that goes into one big piece, which is ultimately the podcast.
Mm,
And the part that I have the most trouble with is marketing myself. Like, I love to
mm.
make those little snippet videos, but then actually posting that, that's the hardest part.
Yeah, okay.
That's
Interesting.
that's the weirdest part. But I really, it's like whatever we decide to talk about in the podcast is something that I have like deep interest in. And I just sort of think about the podcast as like, if you're a person like me. And so that is one thing I wanted to mention, is my whole goal of the podcast is to have the person that is being interviewed be heard, and let them know that they're very important, and whatever their story is, like, I want to hear that. I really want to hear it as just another person. I want to hear what you have to say. And then have the person that's listening, let them feel heard. My main goal is to not um, have someone feel isolated, because I know what that feels like. And that is hard. That is like
Mm,
one of the worst feelings, is to feel like you are all alone.
yeah.
And sometimes when you feel like you're all alone, you feel like you have to come up with your solution all by yourself. And there's so many people in this world, like, there's so many different ways to separate people, whether it be psychometrics. I mean, there's a lot of ways to separate people. But in the end, like, we're all human beings. And to feel that feeling of connection as just
Mm,
another human being, no matter what, like, I feel like that's a rich feeling for me. And
mm,
so I feel like the podcast just does hits so many points for me. And that is probably what I am the most proud of.
mm. I love it. Well, I'd love to listen to your podcast if you feel free to share it, and I
Yeah.
can go and check it
Yeah.
out. But I think the thing that I found most enriching from a creative process, and I'm hearing that from you as well, is that it's sort of like ignoring all the things you told that you should do. Like when we talk about editing, like I'm not a detailed person. It taxes me incredibly to think about details, but I've done editing for over 20 years. Like I've done so much editing. And I gave myself permission with this project to go, what's the easiest version of editing that I can do? To make it simple for myself, as opposed to what's the version of editing that other people expect or the standard I should be reaching, and just flipping that around in every part of the creative process, not just in editing, but just to go, what is right for me? What works for me? What makes making this more fun, or more interesting? I found that a really important switch to make the whole project more enjoyable and interesting, and less taxing, I suppose. And I sort of heard that you sort of took
100%.
the whole podcast and went, right, I'm putting my
Hmm.
touch on everything. And my touch is like what's true
Right.
for me rather than what is right by the podcasting, world standards, etc.
I have like zero interest in what's right by their standards. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, I don't care. I
Mm,
don't care. And
mm,
like, it really is, it's more than that for me. It is so much deeper. Like I said, I'm sharing a piece of my soul, and I will do it how I want to do it.
mm,
And and like and I understand what you're saying too. And I don't like to do like a ton of editing. I don't enjoy that either. But it's like part of the process. So I definitely, there are parts of the process you're going to enjoy more than the others, and you make it your own. And one thing I really enjoy about watching your interviews is they seem so genuine. Like it seems like you're keeping it real. And like that's what I want to see. I don't want to see any type of perfect polished, I want the real stuff.
Mm. Yeah.
So I
Thank
mean, I
you.
didn't even edit my podcast when I first started doing it. I was like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I probably shouldn't maybe have had that attitude, but it is, that's the thing. It's like it's your creative project. And now I've started editing a little bit more and I do enjoy it, um yeah, that's one thing about it is I don't see a lot of people. I don't know. I don't want to say just mothers. I mean, that's just like my POV, right? Like I'm a mother, so I see like other mothers, but just busy people. I
Mm.
don't see people doing things for fun much anymore. Like people try to
Mm.
monetize things, and I'm not saying it's wrong. You've
Mhm,
got to pay the
mhm,
bills, but and that's something I struggled with in the beginning too. I was like, do I try to monetize this? And it was like I feel like that takes it to a different place for me. That's not what I want. And I had to really think
mm,
about that for a long time. And I may change, at some point, but for right now, it doesn't feel right. It feels like that is what I just want to make it exactly what I want to make it. And I want to see what I can birth from this.
mm,
What can I create from this
mm.
without, and I can be the sole person making that decision. I really want that,
I think it seems to be a lot
because I've
harder
always
to
worked.
have. Oh, it seems to be a lot harder to have hobbies these days. One of those, what are your hobbies? And I'm like,
Yes.
yoga and
Right.
talking with my friend, and I think
Yeah.
sometimes, our business or our podcast, can be our hobby. And, as a seven, I definitely tried to like monetize every hobby had to be monetized. Otherwise it couldn't be legit. And I think over the last few years, I've really learned to go that you can just be interested in that without having to turn it into
Yeah.
something financial or put just enjoy it.
Right. I mean, we should be enjoying our lives and we can't wait till we retire. I mean, who knows if we'll be able to do it then? That's kind of what I think. Like, enjoy your life now. I
Mm,
mean, it's here for the taking. Your life is really what you decide it's going to be.
mm.
So, yeah, I just don't see a lot of people. I mean, you're right. That what do you do for fun? Like, I don't know.
I know. And as a seven, you'd think I'd be all over that question. I'm like, nope, nope. Where's the fun? Yeah.
A lot of sevens I know they're very busy people and they're doing all the things, um all good things, but not necessarily just. I don't see them like just kicking back.
Mm, yeah.
Not my age anyway. I don't see a lot of people doing that.
No. I liked what you said about you doing this project and you don't know what will birth out or emerge out of it. And I think sometimes we've forgotten that creativity begets creativity, and the true project we need to make is never the first project we need to make. And some of our earlier creative projects are just building skills and working through stuff and exploring. And so I love what you said about, you're doing this podcast for fun and you have no idea what it will birth, but you've got an idea that it's going to birth something. And it's okay that you don't know what that is. It's just part of the process.
Yeah, and I just, like I said, once I started being creative and allowing that back into my life, I knew I wanted more of it and more of it. And so I may, go in one direction and it may not lead anywhere, and then I'll go in a different direction. And so it's just really the organic, trusting my gut and not necessarily what I can read. That is a lesson for me.
Mm,
Putting myself out there is a lesson for me. Connecting with my heart and sharing that is a lesson for me. All these things are really good for me. So I don't think anything bad is going to come of this.
mm,
And so I'm just trusting the process, and I'm being in each moment of these things that I do, and just trusting that it will lead somewhere, and I don't have to know where that is. I don't have to always know what the plan is or the structure. Um,
yeah.
and that's really good for me. And it's a huge departure from what I do every day. I'm working like 13 projects at work right now. So it's very busy, and I work on a bunch of different types of projects, and everything is very practical. It's very, I have to kind of hurry And I don't love that, but I do. I mean, time is of the essence. And this feels like such a different, just a departure from that, and just where my heart is leading, and where I don't have to know where I'm going, where I know that whatever I've done is enough preparation. And I know enough to do this because I can be me, and I don't have to do anything to be me. I am me. So, like, I don't feel like the incompetence is not a part of it. And maybe that's the biggest piece, is like at work, I feel like I'm always thrown into these projects that I haven't done before, but I have to learn how to do. I have to learn how to program Python, this, computer mapping language. I have to learn I have to teach myself quickly how to do this. And I have to teach myself quickly how to do something else. And it's very challenging, which is good for me, but I need a different thing. And that's what this is. So there's no fear of incompetence.
Has a totally different energy.
Because you can't fail at being, you can't fail at being yourself.
I love that. Because I'm not sure I believe that all the time. I think sometimes I can fail at being myself. It's one of the, I love that. You can't fail at being yourself. Beautiful. Yeah. It's very easy to undermine and question ourselves. So it's beautiful to hear that. And that creativity is a space where that works and allows for that.
And I never really thought about any of that until right now. Like how incompetence is not part of this. And I was like, oh my God, that's why I like it. Until just now. But yeah.
Love it. Well, I think I don't have any other questions. This is feeling complete to me. Is there anything else you want to add? We felt like that,
I don't think so. It feels, it feels like we talked about everything, and I don't know. I feel like we did a good job. I've enjoyed it. I love conversations like this.
Oh, perfect. And are you open to sharing your podcast name so we can go and have a listen?
Sure. Yeah, it's called We Are All Human Podcast. So
love it.
It's out there.
Go and check that out.
But
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. I've loved talking creativity with you.
Thank you.